Welcome to episode 445 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always, and we've got a tribute episode for you, unfortunately, because we lost the lead vocalist of Three Doors Down, Brad Arnold. Passed away earlier this week. Very unfortunately, the man lost his battle with cancer at the age of 47. It goes without saying that is way too young to pass away. And it's unfortunate because this guy had been at it since a very young age. I mean, their debut album came out 26 years ago. So if you can do some quick math, that means their debut album that showed up and immediately had hits on the radio 26 years ago, that happened whenever he was 21 years old. And this man did not lose where he came from, basically. He remained a humble dude. He remained an amazing human being throughout this 26-year career, at least the career part of it in the spotlight. You know, the band had been together a bit before that, and it's been noted how he was writing some of those songs in his teenage years. These songs that resonate with people throughout their life, and a teenager was writing them. That shows you where this guy came from. You know, with Kryptonite, which is probably their biggest song. If it's not, it's got to be top 2 or 3 along with When I'm Gone and Here Without You. But I mean, that's the first single, and this song became massive. I believe that song has like over 1 billion streams on Spotify. It's probably the same on YouTube. I mean, there's rock bands out there that have billion streams on songs, but generally it's like Guns N' Roses or AC/DC or someone that has these songs that have echoed throughout time. You know, well before Brad was putting out music. So it's always awesome to me to see a rock band this day and age have songs that resonate that much with people. And Brad certainly did that. The guy was an exceptional songwriter. He proved that over and over throughout the years. I mean, they came out with A Better Life, and then within a couple years they had Away from the Sun. They're still having hits. You know, and throughout their career, the song It's Not My Time, you know, came out 8 or 10 years in their career, and that's just such an unbelievable track. Citizen Soldier, all that, and they continued performing live at a high level every year this band was out there. As far as my history and my fandom of them, it happened pretty quick. As soon as I heard Kryptonite on the radio, it jumped out to me because, you know, it had a different sound, and even though it had that hard rock early 2000s rock and roll vibe to it, it still set itself off different. You know, we'll talk about that here in one of the interviews I've got coming up with Jeremy Harrington about how that kind of set itself off and set itself apart from the pack. And then I absolutely love that song. And this album, I knew it had to have come out because of my memory. I knew it had to have come out early in the year because I have a specific memory from March of that year. And so I looked this up, and the album came out February 8th in 2000. And he passed away on February 9th, 2026. 26 years and a day after the career began, basically. And I mention that because March of that year, on spring break during college, my friend Matt Ballista and I drove to Florida from Oklahoma. We drove down to Florida, or we went to New Orleans first, and then, you know, spent a couple nights there hanging out in the Bourbon Street area, and then we drove on down to Florida, Jacksonville and Miami, where my ex was, you know, going to school in Miami, and our good friend Seth was stationed in the Navy in Jacksonville. So we kind of just made this road trip out of it and hit these different spots. Went to some spring training Mets game as well. Had a great time, but the point is, I specifically remember the soundtrack of that trip revolved around The Better Life. You know, obviously, we didn't listen to it 24 hours a day for a week straight, but I can't remember anything else we listened to other than driving there and driving back. We listened to The Better Life a lot. I know Matt loved it when it came out. I loved it. So it was just one of those moments in time where I specifically always related that album, the beginning of Three Doors Down, to that moment in my life, at least. And I got the chance to see them live pretty quickly. I believe it had to have been later that year because they got big pretty quick. I believe they were at like at a headlining level by the time Away from the Sun came out. But during that Better Life run, they played a radio fest in Oklahoma City, which would have been Cat Fest or maybe their birthday show. I'm pretty sure it was just Cat Fest. And I don't remember who was headlining that. There was a couple years in a row, like one year Godsmack was, I think, headlining. One year was Sammy Hagar. But the point is, Three Doors Down was one of the first bands on. They played the second stage, I believe, at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And I made sure to be there because, like I said, I was already a fan. I already had this album. And it was really just, it was exciting because it's always exciting to me to see any band in their, pretty much in their infancy. And, to be able to look back now and say, you saw a band that became an arena-level headlining band, on the side stage at a radio festival with bands going on after them that never, several of those bands that went on after them, never reached the success they did until you get to the headliners. But I also, got the chance to see them many times throughout the year. And another one that sticks out to me was, I believe, 2005. And this bill to me still, really stands out because it was Three Doors Down headlining. This was a show I saw in Tulsa at the old convention center, I believe. And the openers were Shinedown and Alter Bridge. Shinedown was on their second album, so it was before they blew up into a headline arena level band. And Alter Bridge was on their debut album. And then now, you look back, and Alter Bridge, is a headline theater headlining level band. Shinedown is arena headlining level band. And Three Doors Down, of course, maintain that headlining level throughout their career as well. So it's also cool to be able to look back at shows like that and see like every band, you catch a moment in time, seeing Alter Bridge in their infancy, just like I did a few years before with Three Doors Down. I mean, obviously Alter Bridge as musicians weren't in their infancy, but you know how that goes. The band was. It was kind of infancy for a lot of people to find out about Miles Kennedy, at least. Did not go back and dig through and try to figure out exactly how many times I've seen Three Doors Down, but I've seen them probably 7 times throughout my life. The most recent time I wanted to bring up because it's pretty significant in, my story as far as being a fan, at least. And it was 2002 at the Blue Ridge Rock Festival. I was working artist relations. And the stage that I was responsible for was stage 2. And this was one of those double stages, like at many festivals where stage 1 and 2 are basically both the main stage and they alternate back and forth. They sat side by side, that kind of stage 2. Three Doors Down was one of the bands on that stage one of the nights. They were the final band. On the second stage, they went on, I can't remember who it was right. It might have been before Slipknot. It was before someone pretty big, obviously. But the point is, Three Doors Down played that stage. I had the chance to, kind of interact with them throughout the day. Because during artist relations, obviously you have to. A lot of times more so you're dealing with the tour manager or crew members. And that's the case here as well. But I wanted to bring up the fact that pretty early in the day, after Three Doors Down, after their tour bus had arrived, their tour manager, Chuck, had let me know that Brad wanted to go, to the stage. And, where our compound was and where the buses were parked wasn't directly by the stage. It was like a good, healthy walk to get there. So he was saying, hey, can we get a golf cart? Brad wants to go to the stage. No problem. So we, I go over there, get him, we pick him up. It was the 3 of us, I believe, maybe one of the other band members was there as well, I think. But the point of this was, as we're going, he mentioned that, he thanked me. And then we got over there, and as he, they said, hey, if you want, can you hang out for a minute? We're just going to be here a few minutes, and then we'll go back. So I'm waiting for him to come back, and again, Brad thanks me and said, I just wanted to check out the stage we're playing on. And, they went up. I know this sounds kind of insignificant, but they went up there and, he walks around, looks at the stage, kind of, I guess, gets a feel for it. And I just thought that was cool. And it felt unique to me because, seeing that, from just say that festival alone, I was dealing with close to 30 bands on that stage throughout the 4 or 5 days, and no one else asked to do that. I've had it happen at a couple other events, here or there. Just showed me something, this guy is very interested in, making sure, he's in tune with what's going on. And I feel that plays into what you see with the talks coming up with Jeremy and Adam about this man's humbleness, about his attitude, the way he carried himself, the way he presented himself just as an exceptional human being. You can say that about a lot of people, and, every time someone passes, there's always like, oh, they were the greatest person. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes, they're just trying to throw some love to their friend or if it's a celebrity, their idol that maybe wasn't the best of people, but still everybody deserves respect. But in this case, when all these musicians from all these different bands, I mentioned Alter Bridge earlier. I saw a post from Mark Tremonti, and of course, Alter Bridge goes hand in hand with Creed. And I saw a post from Scott Stapp. They toured a lot throughout the years with Three Doors Down. And I've seen it from across the board. I just recorded an episode with Robin McCauley, who, if you're not familiar with that name, if you're younger, Robin McCauley was in the Macaulay Schenker group. He's been in the Michael Schenker group and Michael Schenker Fest for the past, 8-10 years as well. He's now in a band called Black Swan. He was in Survivor. Of course, Eye of the Tiger and Burning Heart and all that stuff. This man's extremely accomplished. He's in his 70s, and when I talked to him yesterday, we were talking about, Ozzy and Sly Stone and people that had passed, and he brought up Brad Arnold unprovoked and talked about his fandom. And he pointed out specific songs and about how much of an amazing writer he thought Brad was. And this is coming from a 73-year-old man who has been in this industry now for 45 years at the least. He had hits in England and with Grand Prix before he ever joined Michael Schenker. So, to see the impact that Brad had as a musician goes hand in hand with the fact that he was a great person and a great songwriter. It all combines into like the love you see outpouring from people. And you see a lot of people talking now that he's passed, but even before the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of posts of people talking about his faith and how open he was about that. You see a lot of videos online of him speaking at a show and talking about his faith, his Christian faith, his faith in Jesus, and he brings that up. He would bring that up at every show. A lot of people, might moan and groan when someone's doing that, but I never saw anybody talk negative about it because he did it so well, in my opinion. Like I'm one of those people that I fully believe everybody has every right to believe or feel or think or do whatever they feel and please as long as it doesn't hurt other people. And surely speaking about your faith and your conviction and your devotion shouldn't hurt other people unless those people are just weak-minded. But the fact that he did it at concerts with 10, 15,000, 20,000 people, they're not a band associated as a Christian band, but he still did it, and people still accepted it because he spoke in a way that put his point across without trying to force anything upon people, which is, I think, where the negative side of that comes to people whenever people are like preaching to you or you feel like you feel as though they're talking down to you. Brad absolutely did not do that when he spoke. And that's all you can hope for from anyone in the spotlight that's speaking of something separate from what they're specifically known for. In his case, being a rock star, being a singer. So I just want to throw that in, that I thought that was exceptional and beautiful how he did that. And here we are, 15 minutes into this, and I haven't even mentioned the 3 guests on this podcast, one of which is Robin McCauley, I just mentioned a little while ago. I'm going to throw that on for you. It's just like a minute-long clip of what he said. But then I brought in 2 people to talk with me here that I saw social media posts from, talking about how much of an impact Brad Arnold and Three Doors Down had on them at a young age. Jeremy Harrington, who has been on this podcast before with the band Wither, is going to talk to me here in a minute about how much Three Doors Down had an impact on him at a young age. I've also got Adam Raymond, who has been on this podcast in the past as well with the band Dime Store Riot. And we'd played his music in the past with Driver as well. And he's here to talk about how going to see Three Doors Down live, pushed him into wanting to be a live musician himself. So you can't get any more impactful as that, I believe, as a musician. Obviously, any band that gets to the level that Three Doors Down is going to have people out there that they influence. It's inevitable. But Three Doors Down, I believe, is one of those specific bands because they're from this time period. Like both Adam and Jeremy are a bit younger than me, so they're getting more into rock music at this time, the same way I was whenever, Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and Def Leppard and Bon Jovi, all the thrash bands with Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax and all this stuff was going on at the end of the 80s. That's whenever I was really getting into music, and this is kind of the same for them, 10, 12 years later. So it's great to get these perspectives. So I'm really happy to have both of them on there. So let's jump into this right now. Up first, we've got Jeremy Harrington talking about what Brad Arnold means to him.
I mean, honestly, for me, it started with Kryptonite. I think I was like 14, when that video dropped. It was like early 2000. And I'd been listening to rock music. I had just been introduced to it, like maybe a year or so before. And, I kind of grew up really poor and we didn't have cable. So like you couldn't watch MTV or whatever. So when we finally got it, like I remember like flipping through and hit MTV and I like TRL or one of those shows was on, and Kryptonite was the very first music video I ever saw. And so I think like the visual of connecting, just when it starts playing that, seeing them play it and then hearing the lyrics kind of made it like click a little different. And it was like that moment changed my whole fucking life. I had to learn to play music. Like now it's about, survival. It's not ambition anymore. Like it was, it just hit right,
That not only made you a fan of rock music, but it instantly made you want to be a musician as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because to me, like the thought of playing music had never really occurred to me. Like, it's like I thought that like, rock stars were like made in some lab somewhere or something. I didn't think it was just like regular, me and my buddies could get together and start jamming. It never occurred. And then I saw that and I thought, well, like, holy shit, and then like, they released more songs coming out and I felt like they didn't have to be heavy to connect. You know what I mean? Like I listen to a lot of heavier music. But the way that Brad wrote, I feel like was kind of accessible to everybody without being shallow, if that makes sense. Like a lot of people write vague songs, and the way that he did it was so creative. You listen to things like Loser and Let Me Be Myself, and you can tell like he's carrying all of the same stuff, the guilt, the shame, the pain, everything everybody else feels, but he's doing it in a way and writing it in a way that's not glamorizing, and I think that builds a lot of trust. And so that was when I was like, yep, if music can be played that way and that with that kind of honesty, I'm in,
Yeah, that's a great point because there was so much music that was coming out around that time, that kind of radio rock stuff that fairly generic for the most part, and they might have one or two songs that really stood out. But with Three Doors Down, it's like you said, those songs like Duck and Run and Kryptonite had a real uniqueness to them that other bands weren't doing. And I think that's kind of what, pushed them to that next level from a lot of those bands.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Cause I think about the same time, you had bands like Papa Roach was just getting big with Last Resort. And then like you had some pop punk stuff. Blink-182 was hitting off right about then. Big Nickelback. And so, they were definitely doing it in a way that everybody else wasn't. I remember the first time I saw them too. It was like 2008 before I saw them. It was at Tulsa Theater. I think Chevelle was opening up for him.
Okay.
And I remember Brad came out on stage. He was like, "Hello, friends," because he had like that accent, real Southern Mississippi, and it was just like he was so friendly, but just so friggin' real, And I feel like the way that they played, yeah, they were different than everybody else because it wasn't just like catchy hooks, like they're he was asking questions that like a lot of people are just afraid to say out loud. Please let me be myself. You know what I mean? If I go crazy, will you still call me Superman? You know what I mean? Like there's a relatability to it that yeah, everybody else wasn't that creative. Just they weren't.
You mentioned like them kind of being your gateway into, rock music, but like looking back now, like what do you take away from like Brad or Three Doors Down the most is like what it means to you, like as a whole now that you're older?
Oh, I think I'm probably not the only person that wouldn't be a musician without them.
Okay.
Um, you know, there's, I mean, hell, there's Three Doors Down, cover bands that, out there. And for me, it's weird to see cover bands or tribute bands of bands that are still in existence,
Yeah.
but, but it happened. And I feel like the biggest takeaway from all of it is, in the moment, I was, like I said, really young. I was a teenager discovering them. And, you're learning to process, whatever, being a weird kid in school or whatever else. Then you look back and those songs still hit, but they hit in a whole new way now as you gain life experience. You know what I mean? I feel like Three Doors Down is timeless.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of touched on it, but one thing I did want to ask you was, what I know about you personally is mainly heavier music.
Yeah.
So like what was it that kept you paying attention to him? Was it like you said the songs that like really resonated or it kept you a Three Doors Down fan throughout the period where you're just listening to mostly heavier stuff?
I really feel like a lot of it was just kind of a lot of the nuance in his writing. Again, without he could write songs for everybody without it having to be so vague that you had to what do you think that song meant? What was he going through when he wrote that? You can tell, and he was able to do it with all of these different I don't know, just analogies, and I think I remember an interview where he said where he was taking like a creative writing class because I'm pretty sure he started writing when he was really young too, if I remember. I think he's about the same age that I was when I started listening to him, and so a lot of it, he uses a lot of visual representation in his lyrics. I left my body lying somewhere in the sands of time. You know what I mean? So he'll use, these phrases and things that are just, you can picture it. And but it's easy to connect to,
Yeah.
you can see the distance he's conveying in his words.
I always loved that as well, just because, like you mentioned earlier, like he's, got the Southern voice and he's a real humble dude and he comes off as this really unassuming dude, but then he's really deep when you listen to what he's saying and what he's singing and writing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got this like thick Southern drawl that you would like hear from, some of you like walked into at the grocery store or something.
Yeah.
And then to listen to, and even the way he speaks doesn't sound like his singing voice.
Right.
It's the contrast there is insane. But it's so good,
Do you have a favorite album? Is it The Better Life because that's where you came in, or is there something else that stands out later on to you more?
I think The Better Life is always going to be up there. Away from the Sun was also really good. When they came out with their self-titled album, Citizen Soldier was on that one, I remember, and I think that was about the first time that I saw them live. So I think that one kind of hits real close.
Okay. Did you get a chance to see him live more after that concert?
I didn't.
2008. Okay.
No, I didn't. And in fact, I got lucky even being able to go to that show. It was a buddy of mine because I was really young. It was 2008, so I had a really young child at the time and working too much. And a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, I got extra tickets to see Three Doors Down tonight. You want to go?" And I'm like, "Absolutely,"
Yeah.
And I mean, I can still, I remember that concert so vividly. Um, I can still tell you what the stage setup was, and everything. I can tell you the light show. Um, I can tell you most of the set list. They just like, yeah, they just kind of hit me emotionally enough that my brain locked that one in.
Very good. Sometimes that's all you need is one show because it can't be topped because of things like that, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely top five.
From a fan standpoint, what would you think if 5 years from now, Three Doors Down shows back up with a new singer? I mean, because bands do this all the time now. Would you be accepting of that? Because these other guys, are as part of much a part of that music, or would you be offended by that?
That's hard for me to answer
Yeah.
because immediately when you say that, obviously the first band that comes to mind is Linkin Park,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like, rest in peace, Chester, but Chester made a decision, and this might be kind of a hot take for some people, but he made a decision, and he made that decision for himself personally, but I don't feel like he gets to make that decision for the rest of his band,
Yeah.
and so if they want to continue, they should be able to. That's their job, and they've got to keep working and making a living too. In a case like this, where, Brad's fighting cancer, what would he want them to do? Would he want them to keep going or not? I feel like if they did, um, I don't know that I'd want to see them put out new music. I think I'd be okay maybe with them playing his songs, and just that kind of tribute to him, just kind of the same way like Static X is doing right now.
Yeah.
But it's obviously it's never going to be the same, and I think trying to record new music and would be replacing him. And I don't think you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of where I stand as well. But that's also a good analogy with the Chester thing. I mean, it is two different situations. And I'm kind of hypocritical on that because I would be pissed if Soundgarden made the
Yeah,
choice to bring someone else in, but it's the same situation. I mean, he made that choice.
yeah, it's that's the thing. Yeah, you don't, it sucks, that happened. But again, he doesn't get to choose, for Mike Shinoda and the rest of the guys what they do.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to throw in about Brad or anything?
No, man. I think we kind of touched on all of it. I would hope that if anybody wasn't a Three Doors Down fan before, that they can go back and listen to that and kind of um, pick up on the kind of communication that he had, and and if you're a musician, to try and hone in on that too. You don't have to be, the heaviest band ever. You don't have to write songs so vague that it fits everybody. You can tell your story honestly, and people are going to latch onto it. It worked for them. They had no idea they were going to go 20 years.
Yeah,
So
very true. I've looked at a lot of comments and posts that I've seen about Brad, and I've seen quite a few people that like were just commenting on posts like I haven't followed Three Doors Down. I'm not real familiar with them, this and that. But just seeing a video of this guy talking, has made me a fan. So that's kind of cool to see. Like I don't know if you've seen this post from the band was called Hannon, I think, or Hanan. I don't know how to pronounce it.
oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, he like a cameo or
yeah, he
something that
made
they
that
posted.
cameo that they made as a joke for Chet, with him
Yeah.
not knowing that it's for Chet. And even that in the comments, people were like, I didn't know anything about him, but just watching this video makes me want to listen to their music.
And I think something too that's amazing about Three Doors Down is, and it's because this is something that you don't see a lot anymore, was the fact that their lineup stayed pretty consistent their entire career.
Yeah.
Not a lot of turnovers. Chris Henderson was their guitar player like since the dawn of time. You know, and you just don't see that. So I think that speaks to kind of the brotherhood that they had. These guys you got to really care for each other when you're spending that much time together on the road, in the studio, going through all of that, all of the red tape with your label and all of the stuff that you have to do. It takes a bond to do that. So I think that also just kind of speaks to who they were as people. Because yeah, it's really rare. There's a handful of bands maybe that I could name right off the top of my head that have an original lineup still.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here and talk about Brad. Hope you've been doing well as well.
Yeah, man, you too. And friggin' anytime, I'm always down to talk music.
There you go. Huge thanks to Jeremy Harrington for coming on and telling his giving his thoughts on Brad, Three Doors Down, and how it affected him as a musician and a fan as well. Jeremy, like I mentioned before, has been on here in the past with the band Wither. He mentioned to me when we were talking that he is, talking to an area band about joining. So if that comes to fruition, I'll let you know. Hit him up on socials, Gonzo Inc. 918. The man's an accomplished tattoo artist. I believe he works out of Electric Eye Tattoo in Sapulpa. If I'm wrong on that, Jeremy, and that's changed, I apologize. But yeah, hit up Gonzo Inc. 918. Give him a follow. All right. Next up, I'm going to throw you in this Robin McCauley bit from, like I told you up front, this was from a episode that hasn't been released yet. I just recorded this literally 2 days ago now. And it's a podcast that went like an hour and 10 minutes talking about everything Robin's got going on. Robin is the vocalist for the band Black Swan, which features members of Dokken, Foreigner, Winger, Mr. Big, so it's like a classic, like you expect, late 80s to early 90s. Melodic rock sound, but they also get, pretty heavy at times. Reb Beach, of course, has a very long history now with Whitesnake. So, he kind of leans in that heavier style with Black Swan as well. He, of course, has spent tons of time with Michael Schenker, had lots of hits with Macaulay Schenker Group at the end of the 80s into the early 90s, and has come back and worked with Michael with the Michael Schenker Fest he's been doing, where he's brought back all his previous singers throughout the years. He's done that a lot over the past, 7, 8, 10 years. I don't know how long they've been doing that. Pre-pandemic, I know that much. He was the vocalist in Survivor for a little while. He was a part of Raiding the Rock Vault, which so many, well-known musicians have been a part of in Vegas. The guy's accomplished as they come. Grand Prix was a band he had early on, had hits in England. But I'm saying all that to let you know, this guy has been around, done his time, and during this chat, he threw this bit in for me about Brad Arnold, who, like I mentioned before, I didn't even ask him about. So this was very cool to show that this man really is truly a fan. So here we go. Here's Robin McCauley talking about Brad Arnold.
We've lost some greats, and I wanted at the top of the show to offer my condolences to the great Brad Arnold from Three Doors Down. First time I heard 100 Days, it broke my heart. I went, this songwriting is killing me. Then Here Without You was like, it just kept getting better. And then when I read that he was only 15 in his math class when he wrote Kryptonite, what a loss at 47 years of age. Hadn't even started, So my deepest condolences, and I know the whole industry right across the spectrum are paying condolences to him and Three Doors Down and his family right now.
All right, huge thanks there for that bit from Robin McCauley. Like I mentioned, that episode's not out yet, but it will be out pretty soon, probably in about a week and a half. My next episode will be with John Karabi, and it'll be the one that follows that. So you will get that full episode here coming up in a while. But Robin McCauley has always been one of my favorite people to have on the podcast. That's the 5th time now. Falls directly into that category, like Brad Arnold. Just one of the nicest people you could have a conversation or deal with. So it makes sense that he's a fan of Brad Arnold himself. All right, now we've got Adam Raymond. Adam is the vocalist of the band Dime Store Riot. Dime Store Riot was on this podcast as a full band. It's been, I believe that was the summer of 24, so we're a year and a half now. So long overdue to get them back on here, but in the meantime, we've got Adam back on here. Unfortunately, it's in a tribute situation, but we talk a little bit about Dime Store Riot and what they've got going on here as well. But Adam, just like Jeremy, has a story about how Three Doors Down affected him early on and really pushed him into wanting to do what he's doing right now. So I'm going to let you hear from Adam and what he's got to say about Brad Arnold.
Back in the early 2000s, I would estimate probably 2010 2002, 2003. Not sure the exact date or anything, but a buddy of mine, his name was Daniel Cash, got us a couple of tickets to go see Three Doors Down in Jackson, Mississippi. First show I ever went to. I'd never been to a concert before then.
Wow.
Um, always loved music, but it just seemed like that day was a little different. You know, we got to the shows, and I think it was at the Coliseum in Jackson, Mississippi. Um, but we didn't have good tickets, of course. You know, back then didn't have a lot of money, so
Yeah.
we had nosebleed seats, and but you know it was cool. We're gonna go to a show. I can't remember who else was playing there, but Three Doors Down was definitely the main attraction. So we were up in the nosebleed seats, and my buddy's like, "Hey, we should try to sneak onto the floor." I was like, "Man, I don't really know about that," because, you know, I was young, and I was like, "Oh, what if we get caught and they kick us out?" You know. But he eventually talked me into it, so we ended up going down. Security got distracted. We ended up on the floor. Once we're on the floor, it's like, okay, we're in now. We just rushed into all the people, and we're like, "There's no way they can find us now." So,
Yeah.
so we just kind of stayed out in the crowd and everything. You know, it was a little while later whenever Three Doors took the stage, and we pushed our way forward, probably got about 10, 15 feet away from the front of the stage. Couldn't get anywhere closer than that because the people were just so packed in there.
Yeah.
But we had a good view, you know. I was like, okay, this is cool. So show started and just stood there amazed as Brad, you know, controlled the stage. His presence and everything about him was just like total rock star. I was just mesmerized with him. You know, the lights on him were perfect, and you could his piercing blue eyes just kind of like just got you. You know, as he's singing with so much conviction. I was like, oh, wow, man, this is something special. You know, I felt it inside of me. I was like, man, you know, you've got the ability to do that too. I mean, he's no different than you. You know, you just don't have that stage yet. So it just felt kind of like mystical at that point. I was like, one day, you know, I said, I'm going to be on a stage, and I'm going to do what he's doing one day. And I didn't know how, I didn't know when it was going to happen, but I just knew it was going to happen at some point. So, you know, a couple years go by, I'm back in Tulsa. I was living in Mississippi at the time, but I ended up back in Tulsa. And a couple of guys I knew from the late 90s used to hang out with them. They had a band, and they ended up, we started hanging out and stuff again. Well, they started looking for a singer, and I didn't know it at the time, but you know, I ended up inadvertently trying out for their band when I went out with their drummer to do some karaoke. He was like, "Holy crap, man, you can really sing." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Okay." Well, they brought me in for a tryout, and they said, "You got the job." So I joined a band called Rhythmic Disturbance. Some of you guys in the Tulsa scene may know that band from way back in the day. Played with them about a year, and then eventually we had a little breakup and reunited with them 10 years later with a different drummer, Mike D, and started Driver. Did Driver, and then eventually Driver kind of went our separate ways, and you know I'm with Dime Store Riot, and I intend for this to be the last band I kind of work with, but we're putting everything we can into it. But that concert was the beginning of it all. You know, I never got to meet Brad personally or anything like that, but he had an impact on my life as a musician. You know, I've always sang his songs at karaoke. You know, I've always remembered those times whenever I had wished for to be in a band, but you know, didn't know how to make it possible. You know, where I'm at now, it's like, yeah, I guess you know, I'm kind of at the start of my journey, if you will, if you really think about it. It's, you know, I've had the little bands in the past and stuff, but never really took off. But this time we're really pushing. So we've been playing all over the country these last 2 years. We've had shows in, you know, New Jersey. We played in Florida. We played in New Mexico. We played all over the place. So, and of course, Rocklahoma, 3 years in a row. Which thank you, Doug Burgess, for that. You know, shout out to him. He's the man. So, and all the fans too. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this journey with us. We appreciate you guys when you buy tickets to the shows, because that's really the way that we are able to take this Tulsa sound and this music and this rock out to the rest of the country. So we really appreciate you guys supporting the band, buying the merch, Like CJ and Paulette says, we're a clothing brand with a soundtrack. So, you know,
Yeah.
the merch and the ticket sales and everything, all the local shows that we do really fund all that other stuff, along with, people that support us in so many different ways. We're always looking for sponsors. Anybody that wants to really help us out, you can always contact us on our website, dimestoreriotband.com, or reach out to us on Facebook or any member of the band personally. And we will definitely accept your support and help us to push this music out to the rest of the country.
Absolutely. With what you're doing with Dime Store Riot, I would say along the lines of Three Doors Down, where it's just a straight up rock and roll hard rock band, But
Yeah, for sure.
previous to that, like with Driver and Rhythmic Disturbance, it was more, it was heavier edged.
Oh
Like
yeah, definitely.
like during that period of time, like what was it about Three Doors Down that kind of kept you interested, as a guy that was doing a bit heavier music? Were you still into, more of your kind of rock, hard rock, melodic rock edge stuff?
Well, with the earlier bands, I really didn't have too much of a say, and I didn't really push my agenda too much in those bands. I came into those projects where they already had music,
Gotcha.
and we really didn't write too much new music at the time. Especially back in the Rhythmic Disturbance days, they already had their catalog of music. We just played that, and that's what we were out kind of pushing. Whenever it got to be Driver, we did write some new stuff, but I wrote lyrics and stuff like that, but I was working off the music that they were already creating, or and they wanted to be a little bit heavier of a band, so I just went with that and never really imposed what I wanted to do in those bands too much. With this band, with Dime Store Riot, everybody's a part of it, and I think CJ and myself and Paulette and Brian, we just have that rock and roll, those roots of rock and roll, and and it really allows me to kind of shine as a vocalist in that style, So with having the back, I don't know, with the background of Three Doors Down and everything, it was a good foundation. And they're not the only band from that era that I really was big into. That's just one of many. And I was a big Hoobastank fan too, and a bunch of other different bands. So Jimmy Eat World and stuff like that. Um, but those influences definitely brought me to where I am now, and happy to have had those influences, and I think it really affects in part some of the ways that we develop our music now.
Looking at it now that you're in a situation, where it's like it's your band and your music, like when you look back at like say the career of Brad Arnold, like what would you take away from him that you kind of incorporate into what you do?
I think I'm a country boy too. I'm from Mississippi, so
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of the same style as far as just being authentic, genuine. I always try to treat people with respect. I may not have the same ideas as you. I may not have the same political ideology as you, but I respect everybody. And, I never want to offend anybody or anything like that. So, I think it's just about having respect for people. And I took that away from him. And a lot of people were saying that, he was one of the nicest guys. And I've tried to exemplify that as well, as just trying to be a good guy and do my thing and put some music out that people really love.
Yeah, it's especially now that you're seeing a lot more videos once he passed, you see how truly humble and just good this guy was as a human being. So it's cool to see that like, you could balance that with like a major career as being, like a huge band for 20 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that he was able to captivate that audience and keep their attention for so long. And just be himself on stage. It really bleeds through whenever you see those videos out there about his faith and everything like that. So I think he was a great guy, and I could hope to be as good as that one day, maybe.
Do you have a favorite era or like album that jumps out to you?
Man, just the stuff on the radio that was played in the early 2000s was pretty much what I loved the most. Anything that hit the radio back then. I mean, we didn't have the internets, or anything like that back when we had Napster and stuff like that. But heck, I hardly ever had any place where I could get, Napster or anything like that. But so whatever was playing on the radio, I was like, yeah, that's good. So
Did you get a chance to see him live again after that initial time you saw him?
one and done, man. I never got to see him again after that. That was it.
Wow. kind of a cool memory. It's like the one time was the time that pushed you into wanting to do what you're doing.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. It was a once in a lifetime experience. And
Very.
it makes for a great story though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Final question for you. I saw that,
Sure.
you guys got this Tulsa show coming up at the end of the month. So, kind of give a shout out and let everybody know what you guys are doing on that end here in Tulsa.
Sure. It's February 28th at the Venue Shrine. We're going to be playing with Stanley's Revenge, Mixtape Catastrophe, and Stutter the band. $15 in advance if you get with any of the bands. Reach out to me personally. I've got tickets on hand right now. If you wait till the day of the show, it's going to be $20. So save $5 and get a hold of somebody before that. Like I said before, when I was talking, these are the shows. We don't do very many shows in Tulsa. So these are the
Yeah.
shows you want to come see. We're probably going to be debuting a new song at this show. So, if you're like, hey, they're only playing the same old, same old. Well, we'll have a new song hopefully by that time. We're kind of fielding it out right now, but come down to the Venue Shrine. Doors are going to be at 7. Show starts at 8. If you buy a VIP experience from us, we are doing an acoustic, a couple of songs acoustically. You get in the doors early. You get a VIP lanyard. You get access to the merch early, and you get pictures with the band. So it's $50 for that. And other than that, the ticket prices are $15 and $20 at the door. And we hope to see everybody out there.
Throwing a little kryptonite or Here Without You.
I wish.
Yeah.
I was thinking I might, because I've sang some stuff on some online apps. Maybe I'll post something on Facebook or something like that. But or if I could find somebody that would play one of the songs acoustically, I could definitely bust it out pretty easy. So.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time with me and getting to hear your story and your fandom of Three Doors Down.
Thanks, Trent.
A huge thank you to Adam for taking some time out there to talk to me about his thoughts and love for Brad Arnold and Three Doors Down. And of course, give us some insight into what's going on with Dime Store Riot right now. Like he said, they've got this show coming up. If you're listening to this and you're in the Oklahoma area, Tulsa, Oklahoma, February 28th at the Venue Shrine. They're headlining a show out there with some other great bands. And then right about a month later, March, I believe it's the 27th, they are playing 89th Street Collective in Oklahoma City as well, headlining that with a few other great bands as well. And this is a band that they're from the Tulsa area, but they are a nationally touring act. They've got great music out there, so hit them up. Instagram, at Dime Store Riot, Facebook, Dime Store Riot. Give them a follow on all the socials. Like I said, there's a full interview with the full band from 2024, about a year and a half ago. CJ, the guitarist for Dime Store Riot, has been on this podcast multiple times. He is right there with Damon Johnson of Leonard Skinner and Brother Kane, having been on here the most times of anyone. 6 times, I believe. Still no one surpassed that. So I need to get CJ back on here just so he can hold his lead. Paulette, the bass player for Dime Store Riot, has been on the podcast several times as well. She was on here with Dime Store Riot. She was on here a couple different times with her other band, Fist of Rage. And she was on here once. She co-hosted an episode with me where I interviewed Donnie V, the original vocalist of Enough's Enough. She came on and co-hosted that episode with me, so that was a cool one from a few years ago. But yeah, Dime Store Riot, tons going on. Check them out. Once again, a huge thank you to Adam for coming on and talking about Brad Arnold. All right, if you're a Three Doors Down fan and you found your way here because of this episode, there's an episode you might want to check out specifically because back in 2023, Greg Upchurch, the drummer of Three Doors Down, was on this podcast. It was episode 373. So dig that one up. Greg was another great dude to talk to. Talked in detail about his coffee shop that he has in Oklahoma. Talked about Three Doors Down a ton. The work that he did with Chris Cornell in his early days. All kinds of great stuff there from Greg. And of course, he talks about Brad in the context of talking about Three Doors Down. So very cool. very cool opportunity, which kind of actually came about from that same festival I mentioned earlier, that Blue Ridge Rock Fest in 2022, when I worked with Three Doors Down, because, I knew that Greg was from Oklahoma, but I just kind of forgot or hadn't thought about it when I knew that Three Doors Down was there, and he was walking by and I noticed that he had on a Oklahoma themed coffee shirt. It wasn't for his shop, but it was for another product. And that's when it hit me. Oh yeah, this guy's from Oklahoma. So I mentioned to him that I was as well, and then we stood around and talked for 10 minutes or so. So then that kind of gave me the intro to invite him on the podcast. So if you're a Three Doors Down fan, definitely check out episode 373 with Greg. And if you're liking what you're hearing, 444 episodes previous to this one, you can check out all kinds of great stuff with members of bands. There's been members of bands like Hellstorm, Shinedown, Breaking Benjamin, Skillet, Whitesnake, Motley Crue, Living Colour, Leonard Skinner, Typo Negative, Guns N' Roses, Def Leppard, Deep Purple, Motley Crue. John Corabi's been on here twice. Well, he's been on here once. The second time will happen next week, early next week. Episode 445 will be John Corabi. I've also had on Dee Snider, who unfortunately recently announced that he's got health issues that will prevent him from going on tour, because Twisted Sister announced their big reunion for the 50th anniversary, doing their first shows in like a decade or whatever it's been. And, Dee Snider's done solo shows in that time period over the past few years. Still sounded great. He's one of those frontmen that was really active. But, the man's like 70 now, 70, 71. With as active as he was live, he probably doesn't want to go up there and just stand there or whatever he might need to do. I don't know exactly what the health issues are, but the point is, Twisted Sister canceled all dates. But Dee Snider was on this podcast, so I got to have that conversation. Jeff Tate, the original vocalist of Queensryche. The list is great and the list is long. People, go check it out. TheThunderUnderground.com. You can listen to everything there. You can listen anywhere podcast are heard, like Spotify. Wherever you're listening right now, hit like, follow, subscribe so you don't miss those future episodes. If you see the option, leave a review. That helps greatly. Anytime you see a social media post, if you just like it, comment on it, or share it, that's a huge help. It gets more people's eyes on it. And speaking of social media, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, I have daily content that comes out that is separate from the podcast episodes. They revolve around like milestones, album anniversaries, history, news, anything that's going on in the world of hard rock or metal, is up for grabs. That's separate from these episodes, but also put out clips from these episodes as well. That Robin McCauley one that you just heard is already posted online since yesterday. You can check that out. And I'm sure I'll have clips of Jeremy and Adam up at some point soon as well. All right. Once again, a massive thank you to Adam Raymond, Jeremy Harrington, Robin McCauley, and our sponsors, DEB Concerts and Sunset Tattoo. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.